Okay, thank you. Freek and I is going to discuss more the gas scene from the onshore point of view and focusing in Southern Africa, where Paul was looking at quite a more global view, but we're going to look at the influence, the potential influence of the onshore can do to the Southern Africa countries. It's a combined presentation by myself and Freek. First, we're going to just look at the global view, and natural gas is a growing primary energy source. And on the graph, you can see the impact of what is happening to your more traditional energy sources, and either stable or coming down. You can see the influence of oil coming down quite a lot. The coal is went up quite a lot and went down, and it's sort of stabilized now, but that's just the current situation because of the war. But then you can see natural gas is moving up quite a lot, and so that is obviously pointing out the importance of gas in the world's landscape. This is a slide just discussing basically the South African situation from a consumption and opportunity for growth, but comparing it also with quite a few other countries. If you look at the gas of your Japan, Germany, United States, and Egypt, by quite high numbers, where South African natural gas is only 3%. But our coal situation is quite high, it's 21%. What is that pointing out? We're heavily dependent on coal, and it's because of a historic shortage of gas. The growth is impacted because of a limited lack of cheap energy. And previously, our energy was very cheap, our coal was cheap, our electricity was very cheap. But then the impact of this on greenhouse emissions is very high, and we're saying it's like 30 to 35% higher compared to gas. And so, to moving to gas as a sort of an interim or transitional field, you can substantially reduce your greenhouse emission. So, and then we will show you a bit around the potential for inland gas resources and the close proximity to the markets. And we believe that renewables will stay low for the long period, but it will become a very important player in time to come. Take time to actually start having a substantial foothold. If you look at those arrows there in South Africa, we believe that oil will still come down. Natural gas needs to increase quite a lot, and we believe we have a potential for that. Coal will come down. Renewables will increase, but we believe it's going to slowly increase over time. And then just the total energy of about 5 petajoules per annum is quite low for a country like South Africa. I think that number needs to grow to about 7,000 petajoules quite soon to impact on the potential growth of the country.
Right. Okay. So if we look a bit at this, and I think this is a point that Paul sort of mentioned also, that energy is not just electricity. There's been a lot of talk about coal and electricity, but we just wanted to show this. So in South Africa, if we look at the gas demand, you will see that industrial use is a fair amount of it. Power is the orange little block there, which is actually quite small, as we said, for gas use in the country. This big block, which is quite an important part, about half the gas in South Africa goes into what we call conversions. And on the left-hand side, you'll see that the biggest part, the blue part, is gas to liquids and subsequent things like ammonia and cyanide. So this is really the Sasol domain. So half the gas conversions go to Sasol. It makes fuel and those things. This is the wax. So this is Sasolburg. The blue is actually Secunda. So you can see that's like 80% of the gas. Then there's a bit going into ammonia and methanol and so on. So the gas as a primary energy source is required for many other things than just power, of which is sort of the dominant discussion, and the load shedding and all those sort of things. There's really a bit of our model to say what can be afforded in the market for different applications. Now, at the moment, just as a reference point, the gas from the Mozambique pipeline is around 70 Rand a gigajoule. That's the price. Sasol has proposed to increase that. You know, there's a nice court case now around that. But we calculate back and say, what can people afford, basically? And so town gas around Johannesburg is around 270 to 500. These things are quite a range depending on what you can do. If you take gas and you replace diesel or LPG, mainly in vehicles and those sort of things, or in power generation type of situations, that price, industrial applications, peak power about 140 to 200 Rand a gigajoule, base power about 100 to 140 Rand a gigajoule. And on the low side is, of course, taking gas and making diesel out of it, things like that, ammonia, and so forth. So that gives us a bit of a range, and that then leads to the next graph here, where we've modeled what could be the gas market depending on different gas prices. And you see the bottom line here, it's the green line, is around $10. Our latest model says about $15 around this number here, which is, let's say, 300 million gigajoules a year. At the moment, we bring in about 180 from Mozambique. In fact, about 170, 17 stays in Mozambique. So if the price is around the $15, it actually, you know, is almost unaffordable here. If the price is around $4 a gigajoule or a bit higher than that, you get the blue line. And what I've put in here is if we, for instance, can get gas, another, say, 1,000 or 1,200 petajoules of gas in here, that is 25% increase in the South African economy. It's very significant. Or if we get there, it is about 50% more energy available, but the price has to be right. That is the issue here. And I mean, we are not sure that imported LNG, even at long-term contract prices, you know, can supply gas inland Gauteng, for example, at these prices, say between $4 and $7, which is what we need. So that is sort of the essence. There's a huge potential for market. Everybody's crying for gas, as we all know.
Okay, we're going to start looking now more at the Southern Africa gas specifically, where they are situated and the potential there. Standard Bank have discussed quite a lot about the offshore. We're going to focus more on the onshore. In the next slides, we'll show it a bit more in detail. But the current gas resources in South Africa is basically where you see all of those dots in it. As I say, I'm not really going to talk about the offshore, but the onshore. That blue on the left is the Karoo, and then towards the more northern part of, and also the eastern part of Southern Africa, there's quite a lot of gas, and we will go through the list of that. Then in Botswana, there is a lot of gas, and in Zimbabwe and Mozambique. Most of the gas in onshore is your CBMs or your sandstone gases that you need to drill about 500 meters down, drop the water level, and bring the gas out. But what is nice about this gas is that they're local in the market, and you don't have to bring them out in the boat and out on ship to Mozambique or whatever. And so by actually doing this project here, is you actually looking at the local economy and the gas are there. This is just for conventional gas resources in South Africa. I think the previous speaker has touched on most of them. But the key to these is they normally take long development timelines. We've now heard that Namibia, which may be quite potential to speed that up. But the issue is it's quite expensive and the time. So what you have on this graph is basically most of the areas in South Africa, but then there's also in Botswana and Zimbabwe. Those green blocks there is to the left-hand side, and the bottom side is your Renegen area, and then it goes through Vereniging, Sasolburg area. There is still gas, but then the big block, the big green block is your Connecticut basic area and extended area south of that. And then the yellow blocks up there is basically Springbok Flats and also the Waterberg areas with quite a lot of gas. And all of these gases is sort of in that range of have to put in a boreholes down to about 500 meters and bring the gas up. Now, the potential of those gases, I'm going to start with the Waterberg. We believe it's plus 2 TCF from published information. Connecticut's website is talking about 4.9. Then there's still Bastion, which we don't have factors. In Botswana, the combination of Kalahari, Clow, and Botao in their published information is 15 plus TCF. Freek, what was the Mozambique number of the TCF there? It was 5.
2.5.
Two
The pipeline, the Ponditamani.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing was developed on 2.5 TCF.
So if you can start comparing that impact that 2.5 had on the compared to these numbers, then the Renegen number is 0.3 at this stage, and then there's quite a lot of others. Boy Brothers up north in South Africa, Zimbabwe, the Invictus, and Mozambique Tech. We're just saying is excluding the Karoo, there's more than 20 TCF available, which is it's substantial to impact the local economy. These projects is in various stages of development. We've now heard what's happening at Renegen, and then the next area that's quite a lot of work is in the Connecticut area, where Nick will give us an update a bit later on. There's in Botswana, Clow is already producing electricity from there, and Kalahari and Botala is doing with quite a lot of exploration work in those areas. It's yours again.
Okay, so if we now go back to that graph that I said, and we look at those potential sources and so on, what we are saying is local gas can actually compete in this sort of orange oval region here. It is close to the market. It is right where a lot of mining happens, where a lot of power is generated, and where a lot of other conversions to other chemicals takes place. So we really see that locally generated gas at this sort of 70 to 100 rand a gigajoule can really compete against imported LNG. And it's a hell of a pity, even if we look at the picture that Paul put up, the in-country stuff is just blank. Nobody talks about the in-country stuff. There is quite a bit of money being spent on exploration and getting those areas going. I really think we have to focus much more on getting these local sources developed, and we have some case studies just now to explain that. The one is electricity generation. I think Paul mentioned that. I mean, we actually need a hell of a lot of gas for electricity generation, just as he's talking about 13 gigawatt or something like that. Diesel replacement is a global trend. For example, about 2 years ago, 70,000 big vehicles in China was converted from diesel to LNG. It is quite a bit cheaper. It has about 35% less greenhouse gas. And we have major routes. We have the N3, we have the N4, we have the road to Cape Town, where big trucking companies are. We've got all the open cast mines. They consume an enormous amount of diesel, which we believe is a big big potential market as long as we can give it to them at a competitive price. I think that's the issue. You can see that a lot of it you can't afford a hell of a high price of gas to do that. But if we can get gas around this $4, $7, $10 maybe a gigajoule, we can really, I think, there's almost an unlimited market for that. All right, so I just did here to put a bit of a hook on what we're talking about now. I developed a bit of a case study saying let's develop 5 TCF, a resource of 5 TCF or resources up to 5 TCF, which is twice the Panditamani thing, right? So that will supply 360 petajoules an annum for 20 years for us. Now, what can we do with that? It will require 11,000 wells. Sounds enormous, over 400 square kilometers. It is quite different, as Koos said. It's about a 500-meter well. It will cost R1 million or something to drill. One well in Panditamani is $32 million to drill. So it's more wells, but significantly cheaper, much less sophisticated, if I can say that. So let's say that drilling all those wells and getting the gas field that sort of size in operation is about 10 billion rand. If you sell that gas at $4 or $5, you'll make 27 billion a year in gas sales revenue. These are sort of speculative type of indications that I can put here. So what can we do with that gas? We can make power. We can make 7 gigawatt of power with that if we just put it all into power. That is about, say, 112 billion rand for power stations, gas-fired power, and you make round about 90 billion rand revenue out of that. We can take all of that gas and put it into diesel replacement projects. You will, that's enough gas to replace 10 billion liters of diesel. The total market in South Africa is about 12. So this is a bit ambitious to get to that sort of level. But as sort of an indication, that will, you have to basically convert the gas to LNG for the diesel replacement. Otherwise, you can't store enough gas from the vehicles and things and move it. So say about 100 billion rand. But you see the revenue is, of course, much better, 250 billion rand on the LNG revenue, because you now sell at oil equivalent diesel prices, a discount against that, but that sort of thing. We can put all of that gas in the pipeline, and I'll just assume some pipeline expansions and things, about 30 billion, say, and at sort of an average price, $5 or $7 or whatever I've used, you get about 40. What is the difference there? One must be careful, because that revenue is the revenue of selling the gas into the end, to a conversion guy. But he now sells ammonia or cyanide or whatever. So the 250 and the 42 isn't really equivalent, if you know what I mean. It is not the final end revenue you get in. But now we say, all right, let us take a balanced view. Let's say we take 40% of the gas into power, say only 10% into diesel replacement, and about 50% into the pipeline. Then let's say on average, that's about 70 billion rands worth of investment, and you get, say, about 82 billion rand of revenue. The reason for this is really to show people there can be significant investment in country, and there's a lot of opportunity. If we all stand together, there's enough market here for a number of players. It's not that we really have to compete. So how can we perhaps do that? So this is just sort of a bit of speculation. Renogen is already going here. Renogen will produce about 260,000 ton a year of LNG when their phase 2 is in place. Then we could potentially put, say, 2 or 3 hubs here. One serving maybe the N3 and the power stations and things in this area. There is the Anglo, Waterberg, and Umbono resources there. Maybe put something there. Maybe put two hubs in Botswana where there is a lot of gas and so on. And say each of those hubs is about, say you have 5 hubs for the 5 TCF, so each hub is about 20%, you know. A decentralized model, I think, is more affordable and more attainable than trying to do one single big thing. And you can have certain hubs concentrating on certain things, maybe have special economic zones, I don't know, whatever, to help the thing. But that is our sort of thought to do that. Eventually, you can link all these things with the inland pipelines together also, so that you can then, you know, distribute gas and move LNG around and so on. So I think that's basically the sort of thought.
I think the big issue on top of this is the local economic development zones in those areas, and actually develop it as a local zone.
It's a hell of a pity that everybody just talks about importing LNG. It really sort of makes me a bit sad.
Okay. I have been looked at a case study on the N3 in South Africa from Gauteng to Durban, about a 500 or 600 kilometer stretch one way. To the east of that, we've got, as we've showed before, the big resources of onshore gas, and then basically take that gas, bring it out of the ground, put it into LNG, and then put up LNG filling stations. And I've just put up filling stations in the Joburg area, maybe closer to where at Frankfurt, where the actual gas field is basically crossing the N3. And then at Harrismith is quite a big hub already for our transport people. They've got transport hubs there, and in Durban. But although I've modeled it as such, but the issue is you don't have to have it. These trucks on LNG can do about 1,000 kilometers. So you don't necessarily to have, as you can maybe have 2 or 3, but you also need to look at your interconnection. But what I didn't add here is, if you do things like this, you'll definitely put in the Newcastle on the mines also and start converting that. But the case study I looked at is only then looking at trucks. I assume there's both directions, 12,000 trucks basically on the road, 6,000 each route, and it's consuming currently on diesel about 1,000, just over 1,000 million liters per annum. Then next to it, I have a case if you run 50% 25% LNG and 75% diesel, then 50 LNG, 50 diesel, and 75 LNG and 25 diesel. On the first 2 scenarios, it could be dual fuel trucks. Dual fuel trucks theoretically can potentially run 50% diesel, 50% LNG. But if you get to the case of 75% LNG, you'll have to bring in total new trucks, quite a big percentage for that can run 100% on LNG. And the N3 is quite tough on that because of all the yields and stuff, and your on the dual trucks, you don't get as good returns out of LNG, and you'll have to run more 50. But you can see now how the diesel drops from 1147 to the right-hand side of 287 megaliters per day. And the LNG is not an equal conversion. You have to increase that, but the LNG increasing from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4. To be able to do this, and we've just looked at smaller LNG plants, the 60 kiloton per plants we put locally in the fields. You'll have to have 3 or 7 or 10 of them to be able to supply that. But look at that diesel rand billion per annum impact. Currently, that impact is about 26 billion, but you can actually drop your imports of diesel to about 7 billion. So you can reduce your imports 20 billion of imported diesel. This is basically all imported at this stage. Where your LNG goes, the combined savings on the two combined is about 6 billion, but that's just from a diesel point of view. It's not the combined profit of the guys who's actually running the projects. But these projects at the bottom line gives you just on the way we model it, returns to close to 30%. So it shows it can do this and you can get the profit. So the impact of this is you have a local development zone, local economic development, local employment, and a serious reduction in diesel imports just on this own impact on the foreign balance of payment and a massive impact on your GDP. And that's just only a few. A project like this would require 1 to 1.5 TCF over 20 years, and that's all. But look at the impact on the economy. So a bit of a vision of South Africa is, so its development of inland gas resources needs much more focus. It's growing the inland gas resource as a primary energy source and a transitional energy source from coal to renewable energy. The graph there on the right-hand side just show your coal energy coming down over the period from a high number to a quite lower number. And you can see your gas has been steeping up faster than renewables because we believe renewables will not be able to do that. And then slowing down, where over time your renewables will go faster and then exceed and take over from that. Where oil will come down slowly over this period. So in this, we'll create development zones around the inland gas fields and obviously around your filling stations. It's a massive potential for the market and for many players and for many local players. But the issue is we need to find a way to motivate this case and also for local players and people to start playing together. It's a massive financial economic development impact. And this can happen relatively quickly. You can 2-3 years, you can get quite a substantial portion of this going if we put our heads together and start doing this. Thank you.